So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker tonight. Helen Rottier is a graduate student in disability studies at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Her experience as an autistic self-advocate guides her research and community leadership focused on academic access, ableism, and increasing the presence of disabled students and scholars in STEM, especially the health sciences. So please join me in welcoming Helen to the stage.
Hello. As Mary said, my name is Helen Roach and I'm a graduate student at the University of Illinois at Chicago in disability studies. My work is focused on autistic knowledge production in and outside of the academy, and that translates to a lot of different things, including student empowerment and mentorship, specifically mentorship in STEM spaces, use of digital social technologies to facilitate connection between students and academics, and work on student representation in fields where students with disabilities are underrepresented, like STEM fields. My background is in psychology, so I consider myself a scientist and part of STEM, even though it's a social science. And my current work is in kind of those three branches that I already talked about. So first is student mentorship and empowerment. And what I do in that space is facilitate the student organization, the Chicago Coalition for Autistic and Neurodivergent Students. We're a group of 18 students right now from across different universities and colleges in the Chicago area. We meet once a month and use a novel mentorship model to work through students' problems, challenges that they're facing, and discuss things that they're experiencing, as well as provide them with opportunities to socialize, make friends, meet new people, get out of their bubbles and kind of experience new things. As part of that, one of the things we're doing starting in January through a grant from the Foundation for Science and Disability is taking some museum trips. So we'll be going to the Museum of Science and Industry and the Adler Planetarium to bring students who don't always have an opportunity to do those things, to do it with a group of their peers and experience some different things as well. The second branch of the work that I'm doing is focused on digital social technologies, specifically the ways that autistics in academia are using Twitter. I encourage you to check out #Autistic Twitter and #Autistics in Academia. There's some really cool conversations going on about what our priorities are, what our strengths and challenges are, what people are doing in the sciences, and what we're looking to change. Which brings me to kind of the third branch of what I do, which is focused on autistic knowledge production and epistemology, looking at autistic rhetoric and how autistics are excluded from rhetoric, and working from that kind of point of opportunity or opening to explore the ways that autistic rhetoric can revolutionize the academic and non-academic spaces of knowledge production. I'm trying to think if I have anything else. Trying to make sure I hit all of the big projects there. Oh! I knew I was missing one. The other part is focused on transition from high school to undergraduate education and from undergraduate education to graduate education and careers. So one of the ways I am supporting that in the Chicago area is as the technical assistance coordinator for the Envision curriculum, which is a evidence-based, standards-based transition curriculum that was developed at Ohio State University and has been implemented in 7 states, in over 100 schools across the country, and is used with high school students with and without disabilities. And that's really critical, is that it can be implemented and is being implemented in mixed setting classrooms, so that students are learning and working alongside their non-disabled peers. I think that's everything. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Helen. Next, I'd like to bring up Dr. Susan Magasi, who's an associate professor of occupational therapy and disability studies at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Her research is focused on issues of healthcare justice, including access, quality, and outcomes of primary and cancer care for people with disabilities. So please join me in welcoming Susan to the stage.
Hi, well, thank you for having me, and thank you to Helen especially for facilitating my participation. So whereas Helen provided a broad overview of a range of programs that she's involved with, I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into one particular program, and I forgot to bring the clicker up. Yeah. That we created called the CAN Research Fellowship, which is the first program of its kind to create a summer research fellowship program for students with disabilities, undergrad students with disabilities, particularly in cancer research. So just a few stats. In the US, about 1 in 5 people have a disability, whether it's a physical disability, learning disability, mental health concerns, sensory impairments, or some combination thereof. People with disabilities have the right to full and equal participation in all aspects of society. Current estimates indicate that about 11 to 15% of university students have some sort of disability, although only about 6% and lower tend to register with Disability Resource Services and sort of choose to self-identify to receive services and supports in academia. And students with disabilities are particularly underrepresented in the STEM fields. So not only does this limit opportunities for students and access to sort of the jobs of today and tomorrow, it also limits the creativity and diversity of the STEM workforce. Pipeline programs have been shown to be successful in helping increase participation in other underrepresented groups in the STEM fields, but very few programs have been developed to target the needs of students with disabilities in STEM in higher education. So we had, could you just click it, thank you. About a year and a half ago, 2 of us got together with this idea of what would it look like to create a fellowship for students with disabilities in cancer. So we had one sort of lone visionary within our UI Health Cancer Center who understood cancer and had really good connections in the cancer world but didn't know hardly anything about disability. And then you had me, who is passionate about disability rights but less knowledgeable and less well connected in the cancer world. So we started working to create this fellowship. Could you change the slide? Thank you. But we knew we couldn't do it alone and that we had to bring in all of these other stakeholders to make the program a success. We needed funders to help support the program. We had to get buy-in from the Cancer Center that this was worth doing and that there were actually students with disabilities who were able and ready to contribute to cancer research. We set up a lot of meetings with people in industry, people in community-based organizations and on campus, and we got a lot of very polite smiles and nods that isn't that a nice idea, but not a lot of buy-in and belief that it was really something feasible and sort of a group worth doing. If you could click the next slide. So we used a framework called the Knowledge to Action Framework from Implementation Science, both to build our fellowship and then to work on getting that buy-in from diverse stakeholders. So we started in the middle there, they call that the knowledge funnel, of looking at the literature and really trying to understand what are those barriers to STEM participation that students with disabilities and faculty members also identify as getting in the way. Next slide, please. So then what we did is we realized that just talking to people about it wasn't getting us the buy-in and the traction that we needed. So we created some novel knowledge products. First, we created a colorful, semi-visually appealing infographic that we were able to share with people to explain the rationale for our program. And then I teach a knowledge translation class at UIC. So we had those students engage with us and with a filmmaker to create a short film about the fellowship and kind of explaining its need, recognizing that we academics can talk till we're blue in the face, but there's something about the emotive quality of film that engage people at a different level. So here's the video. Could you just, yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Yes, come in, please.
Hi, Mr. Cooper.
Hi, Alexa.
I just saw this flyer about a cancer research fellowship, and I was thinking of applying.
Alexa, I know you're a good student, but this is cancer research. Let's make an appointment next week and find something that fits better for you.
Don't listen to that advisor. We all know you have what it takes.
I know, but nobody ever gives me a chance to prove it.
You should still apply to that fellowship.
We have two candidates equally qualified for this fellowship.
I had a look at both of their resumes. I really like this one, but we've never had a student with disabilities in this lab before.
We do have a disability resource center on campus.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that. Okay. I think I made my decision.
Hey, would you look at this? I think I'm onto something.
Oh, wow, that looks promising. We should write it up. I think we might even get published.
Alexa, can I talk to you for a second? Just wanted to be candid with you. I was a little skeptical at first bringing you into the lab, but you've made some very solid contributions, very important contributions to the team. I'd be more than happy to write you a letter of recommendation for grad school.
Thank you so much.
Hey, you're welcome. What are you working on over here?
Well, this is a sample.
Congratulations, Alexa. Awesome job.
Congratulations, Alexa. What's next?
I'm going to grad school to continue my cancer research training.
I knew you could do it.
I knew I could do the work. Someone just needed to give me the opportunity.
Yeah.
The University of Illinois at Chicago's Cancer Research Fellowship is the first pipeline program.
So this is our plea to bring in our stakeholders to participate with us. So we'll cut that part. So not bad for a student production. It hit a lot of the key points about why students don't participate and helped engage people. So through our outreach efforts, we finally got the approval to launch the program. It happened with at the very end of the semester. We had 2 weeks to recruit our students. And again, everybody was skeptical, but we got 20 applicants. who were eligible for the program. We interviewed 13, and we ended up offering slots to 4 of those students. Maybe if you could just click the next slide. I'll skip that one. I just wanted to highlight, we organized the fellowship around 4 main pillars that we felt were best practices in pipeline programs. So the first was immersive research experiences. So about 2/3 of the program, they spent engaged in actual cancer research with high-level cancer research. So they spent 2 weeks paired with a biomedical cancer researcher working on their projects and learning from their team, and then another 2 weeks working as a team in social science cancer research. So they learned about all different aspects of cancer research and were applying and developing skills as they went along. The next pillar is mentoring and role modeling, because that's been identified as one of the major barriers. I don't see people like me doing this work, so we felt it was really important for them to build opportunities to meet with successful cancer researchers, people with disabilities who are successful in higher ed, in medicine, and healthcare. We also had a group of sort of near-peer mentors who met with them. And through a lot of these discussions, too, we also met with a lot of cancer survivors. So in cancer survivorship, they don't like to use the word disability, but as cancer survivors were talking about their experiences, and the students with disabilities were talking about their experiences, we saw a lot of commonalities. And it was able to build some bridges and turn some light bulbs on for the survivors and for the students. Next slide. We know that nobody can be successful in research or in STEM if they're doing it all alone. So we thought it was really important to provide the students with leadership training and career development training. So this involved modules to help them identify their strengths and leverage those. But we also had a 4-part series that was specifically tailored to the needs of students with disabilities. How do you negotiate for accommodations? What do you do if your accommodations aren't met? What are your legal rights? How are those different as a student than as a research assistant, then down the road as a career scientist? Helen was part of an excellent panel with the students too, where they shared their experiences as students in higher ed. Next slide. Thank you. And then we were able, through some really nice networking by the Cancer Center folks, do some field experiences where we partnered with industries to go and visit. We went to Walgreens corporate headquarters. They met with the medical director of all of Walgreens. We had a pharma company came and they sent 5 of their medical directors along with other people. So here are these first, second, and third year undergrad students sitting at a table with all of these mentors and learning from them and being treated as equals. So what we learned too is the students then became the best ambassadors for the program because they also help break down stereotypes and stigma around disability and help people see, oh wow, these are students with disabilities. They're so engaged, they're so smart, you know, and people wanted to work with them because they were a pretty impressive group. Next slide. And then we finished it off with a culminating event that we called Dolphin Tank. So it's sort of a kinder, gentler version of Shark Tank, where they presented themselves as the product back to the mentors, back to all those people who had been guest speakers and sponsors, summarizing what they learned, but then also figuring out how can they make their, we called it the big ask. So what's one thing that they could ask of these sort of knowledge and power brokers to think about what can they do to sort of help me move to the next stage. Maybe it's facilitating an introduction to somebody who does research in an area I'm really interested in. Maybe it is a research assistantship, but it was a nice opportunity to both celebrate them and to network and move forward. So that's a little bit about our CAN Research Fellowship. We're still working with the fellows. We're gearing up for next year. But it was a unique opportunity, and we're really working on ways to sustain and continue it moving forward. So thank you.
All right, next
we'd like to bring up Dr. Maureen Dunne, who's a cognitive scientist and technologist by training with deep industry experience, with over a decade of experience founding, advising, and managing venture-backed cognitive health and education technology startups. She's the co-founder and president of Mindheart Lab, maker of the EduPal robot, which is a fast-growing telehealth robotics company. And she also spearheaded the Autism and Innovation Initiative, which is predicated on including people with autism spectrum disorders and taking a strength-based approach to training, entrepreneurship, and workforce development. So welcome, Maureen. We can try and troubleshoot, but... Oh, there it goes.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Hi, good evening. I'm Maureen Dunne, and I've been an autism advocate, disability advocate for most of my life. Most recently, in the last 10, 15 years, I've been heavily involved in the technology industry. And actually just recently, today just flew in from Harvard Business School, came straight here. And one thing that just was really, I think, encouraging for me was I was part of a program and was meeting with senior leadership in mostly C-suite leaders in publicly traded companies across the world, and I found it was very encouraging to me how many people I talked to this week that were very not only open but just welcoming to including people with autism and other disabilities, and also seeing it as essential, absolutely essential to innovation, to moving their businesses forward, how important it is to have people that think differently, as part of even just a corporate culture. So that I was very encouraged by that. So one thing that's it motivated me. So I started out my career, I worked mostly with children with autism in early intervention programs, and before I got into technology. And over time, to start, it was really inspirational to see some of these kids that were able to develop skills that no one thought they could, at the time. There was, the expectations were very low, and just being part of a team and seeing some of these kids do amazing things that they weren't supposed to do really changed me, right, in my career trajectory. But then over time, I saw that even with some kids that did very well, and that were very motivated and were included in were able to do well, at least in elementary school. When they got to that high school or college transitional phase, there were real challenges that there just wasn't adequate support, and so I started, I ended up co-founding companies and being very involved in technology, but then some of these interests just sort of merged together, where I also then started spending a lot of my time helping young adults with autism transition to the world of work and college and help them get jobs. And I realized that, sometimes, getting a job is only part of the equation. Keeping a job is just as hard. And it's not just about training and skill development for the person with the disability. It's the whole system. If you think about it as a system and an infrastructure of support. And, I started to think more deeply about where the gaps were, and so I started to focus my energy there. And so this is just so there's a number of programs I've been involved in, but they've all kind of followed these three I think areas where I've tried to create and build support ecosystems, right? That both leverage the strengths of the individual, of someone. And again, going back to just even my week at Harvard this week, something that came up quite a bit with just CEOs and executives of major corporations was just how important neurodiversity is, how important it is to, and sometimes, the innovation as well for people who are neurodiverse can lead to innovations that are useful to all of us, and so it's so important, and it just from many perspectives to include people with disabilities, include people who think differently, who are neurodiverse, and along with that, I've discovered that it's not just about providing opportunities for skill development for people with disabilities, but it's also about training employers, and faculty and people that are partnering with individuals, having mentors. That it's that piece of the puzzle is equally as important. And so one of the programs that I started that I'm just really passionate about, it's called the Transition to Success Project, and it's a we're calling it a transition grant / scholarship program. And it initially it was difficult to get off the ground because it is, the way it's structured and organized is relatively complex, but the problem is really complex. And so I wanted to actually try to address some of the challenges that students with autism face when they try to transition, they say from high school to college or work or apprenticeship, and to give parents options, because to see that there's many pathways to success, and there's support systems that could help these students become successful. And so this scholarship, it's $5,000 per student. It's awarded to students in their senior year of high school. And then the scholarship is portable. So it follows that student to the college or apprenticeship or work opportunity of their choice. And there's some logistic challenges of that because, traditionally you when you set up this type, a sort of grant / scholarship program, it's usually sort of more controlled by the high school or the college or an employer. And to me, for this to work, it's really a community model. You have to involve, everyone has to kind of come together in supporting the student. There's the high schools, the college, the work, the local employers. And the thing that's, I think, it's a pilot program at this phase, but one thing that, so I'm still learning, but it's one thing that's, I think, working really well so far is just because it's very flexible. It's personalized and customized to the individual. So if the student needs, so the one thing that's consistent with the program, we'll come back to this later, at Temple Grandin's actually been a huge inspiration. I've had some meetings with her, and one thing she said, she really expressed that she liked this program because she said that, her science teacher that she had she was lucky. She said that he sort of filled this role of being that consistent mentor, through the ups and downs, through that transition process. And, so in terms of the grant, so the one thing that's sort of consistent is that there's a person, whether it's mental health counseling or executive functioning coaching, there's someone who sort of takes responsibility to be the main mentor and be involved in that that young person's life, and has at least 2 sessions a month going forward through this transition process. And then the rest of the program, it's very customized. So it could be that a student is starting to struggle with their English class and they need a writing tutor, or it could be they need a coding tutor, or maybe referral to a psychiatrist. So it's very personalized, and the whole idea is just what we care about most is whatever we can do to use those resources to give that individual student the best chance of success, and to be very customized supports. And one of the interesting things I found employers I've been networking with is that that have always wanted to hire more people, with disabilities and on the spectrum. But their HR person may have said, well, maybe we don't know that much about how to best accommodate. Maybe we should look into this more deeply. That I found that this program's actually, is making a difference in the mindset anyway of some of the employers, where the employers say, oh, well, maybe we're willing to partner with you and take some risk here, and because we really do want to employ more people with autism, and the fact that some of these students will come with this package of supports, it kind of provides this support system that makes everyone more comfortable, I guess, and because again, the goal is not just to get a job, but to keep that job and retain employment. And so just very briefly, this is just some of the criteria for the Transition to Success Grant Award. It's mostly at this stage high school counselors identifying students that seem to be a good fit, and the criteria is students that seem to be the type of student that could really benefit from support, but also have potential for independence given the right types of support. Not too long ago, I'm part of the faculty adjunct at UIC in the Department of Disability and Human Development, and these are the three faculty members that together we were awarded a seed grant from the Discovery Partners Institute to start this new initiative called the Autism and Innovation Initiative, which I'm really excited about. And what's interesting about it is, so the Discovery Partners Institute, a big part of their goal is to try to encourage more entrepreneurship and strengthen the technology pipeline in the state of Illinois, and try to make Illinois, a more competitive state from a technology business perspective. But what's what's my passion is just, so can we keep more engineers in Illinois, and can we encourage more people to take on engineering in Illinois and at the same time employ people with autism? So this project is very exciting, I think, because it does both. So we're doing, there's four main components to the grant, and it's one of the big ones is that it's funding these coding boot camps, and the idea is that for most of them are for individuals that have no experience in coding. And if you've ever looked at any coding boot camps, a lot of them are really, really expensive, like some of them are like $20,000, right? So even someone who might be a little, interested, it's not a reasonable risk to take, if you're not sure. And so this is kind of a really interesting program, I think, because it's grant funded, and so it's free, and there are many versions of it, but it's sort of like there'll be students that'll be able to test out whether coding is for them, and at the same time, each team will include a person with autism on the team. And why I think that's important is that it's there's programs out there that are focused on skill development for individuals with autism, which is great. But I also think it's important to have programs that really are trying to build an inclusive model, so that it's not just about skill development for the person with a disability, but it's also about developing skills of teamwork and social skills and cooperation, being part of a team, and then also that team that maybe the other team members that maybe never had exposure to someone with a disability, them also learning, right, about the benefits of including someone who's neurodiverse. And so there's various aspects of this grant that we're working on. There's also a community college Bridge to UIC program, where there's quite a large number of students with autism that are at College of DuPage, and we're trying to learn what resources might be effective for the ones that do want to transfer to four-year schools, and a lot of them do end up transferring to UIC, is what we can do to better facilitate that transition process and support them. So this was the first coding boot camp we held. This is, these are mostly 16-year-olds, and this was held at Downers Grove South in their makerspace lab. And I was just so impressed by just how fast everyone learned. I mean, we were learning Python, right? And just how fast, people learned to code and then came up with their own business models. It was really, really pretty amazing. And then in September, we held a therapeutic games workshop at the Discovery Partners Institute. And it was a small group, but there was what was just looking back, what was really interesting, there was this young man with autism, and he'd been unemployed for several years, and he was part of our group, and he ended up being the first one to finish, the independent game, and like an hour and 15 minutes before anyone else, and it being the grand prize winner. So we had like a little, mini hackathon at the end, and it just, I saw how it really affected his self-esteem, because he had kind of been he was used to getting rejected by jobs. And I'm thinking, wow, here's this really talented young guy who can code, who just in a matter of days learned to code his own game, and he's been unemployed for several years. And so it made me realize that sometimes, there could be these set of negative experiences that happen with someone with disabilities, and then they, maybe they get discouraged and stop trying, but yet they're really talented individuals. And so we, it was simple games, but these were all beginners, right? So, learned, it was Unity, it was learning to code in the Unity game engine, did a simple emotional understanding game, and then we had a sort of competition, and it ended up being the case that, and there was, a broad group of people, it ended up being the case that the young man with autism who finished his game an hour early was the grand prize winner. And so just in general, just to kind of back up a little bit, the Discovery Partners Institute, I mean, their main goal is to try to, again, try to increase, strengthen the innovation ecosystem in Illinois. And for our project, we also are trying to address, trying to build an inclusive model for integrating people with autism in the STEM work source. I want to talk a little bit about this COD UIC bridge program, and we're just sort of at the beginning stages of this, but there's about 400 students on the autism spectrum that attend college at DuPage, and there's a large number that end up transferring to UIC. So we're trying to, build a pathway that just will make that transition process a little smoother. These are my contact details, so that's probably more of an intro than you wanted, but yeah. Okay, thank you.